Sure. House Bill 44, parental rights in a minor child's health care. This was voted on at our third interim committee meeting. And I think it was actually brought by Representative Ward as an individual bill that we discussed and made into a committee bill. So Representative Ward, do you want to just remind the committee what the bill does?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Is it okay to do it from here?
Yeah.
Okay. So this bill gives rights back to parents to be able to see their children's online healthcare records. A constituent came to me very upset. I believe their daughter had turned 12 and they got a notice from the hospital that they could no longer access their children's online healthcare records because of the well, this is one influencing law, the law that allows minor children at 12 to get treatment for tobacco cessation without the knowledge of their parents. Also, there are other laws involved with this kind of thing. And the second one in this bill is about that a minor can be vaccinated during a public health emergency without consent from their parents. And that's why this bill is parental rights in minor child's health care.
Any opening discussion from the committee? I know we heard it in interim. Seeing none, maybe we'll open it up to state agencies first. We did just have three of them join us, but do you have any comments or thoughts, Director? Okay. Seeing none, Governor's office, same. Seeing no agencies, I assume if the director isn't wanting to speak, you're also here for listening. All right, hospitals or medical society, which one wants to go first? You can come up together too, actually, if you'd like. We're all still getting along from prior auth, I think, so let's keep it going. Welcome, whoever wants to go first.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Sheila Bush with the Wyoming Medical Society. The Medical Society establishes our policy platforms on a few key tenets, and the first of those is access to care. And the way we read this bill, it directly impacts the ability for patients to access care. And for that reason, we're opposed. I think it's important when you consider or contemplate repealing statute to know more context about why the statute was put in language in the first place. And so with a little bit of indulgence, I'd like to give the history on both of these. Thanks. So it repeals two sections of statute in very different parts of statute. The first that I'd like to talk about is 34.3.113. So if you look in statute, this was adopted by the legislature in 2003 after a 2002 interim committee. The Joint Transportation Committee took up comprehensive public health reform in response to 9/11. The Transportation Committee. And so a lot of work in 2002 went into establishing all of the public health statutes, and it was in direct response to fears of future terrorist attacks, mass casualty events, and tragedies. And so if you really look at 35.113 and the language, it's about medical treatment without consent. And so if we go back to where America was in 2002 and 2003, we were deeply fearful of similar events to 9/11 and a situation in which parents might be not available for very tragic reasons, and a child would be left suffering, the language is suffering from disease, death, disability, or suffering. And so I think that's pretty broad and speaks to in a public health emergency, if the public health officer believes that a child is in need, this statute gives them the ability to deliver care to a child who is suffering. And so to repeal that really makes the statement that we don't want the ability to take care of children who are suffering in need. And so I recognize in the presentation that the word vaccination is in there, and that seems to be obviously a hot topic right now. But this is far broader than vaccinating a child. And so I think it's important to be in the mindset of 2002 and 2003 Also, the risk that still is ever present in our country, and be really careful about what we strip out of our statutes and rights of taking care of kids. The second
Can I just
repeal.
stop you? So I mean, going along those lines, we're thinking things like an anthrax or a chemical warfare attack is why you would need some type of an immediate vaccination of the populace in some type of warfare attack. Is that, I just wanted to make sure I'm understanding where you're going.
Mr. Chairman, yes, but also I think it's also just medical treatment. It says, what we're repealing says during a public health emergency, the state health officer may subject a person to vaccination or medical treatment without consent in the following circumstances. If the parent, legal guardian, or other adult person authorized to consent to medical treatment of a minor child cannot be located and consulted, and the vaccination or medical treatment for the minor child is reasonably needed to protect the public or protect the child from disease, death, disability, or suffering. So yes, Mr. Chairman, I think you're correct in terms of communicable disease, anthrax, et cetera. I think you're also talking about mass casualty events.
Sure. Yep. Question. Ripped on the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So here's a proposal, which might be friendly, if we just removed and the vaccination of and the vaccination of in paragraph I and paragraph II. The part would remain to be able to treat children in a disaster or emergency. Yeah.
Bush would.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the intent. I think that there are situations in which a vaccination would be helpful. Not everything where we are today is about COVID. These statutes reach far beyond the most recent pandemic. And I think we need to be really careful to not get too narrowly focused or tunnel visioned on one specific disease. I think the ones that you mentioned are fair. Anthrax, any sort of future terrorist attack or chemical warfare that could be coming that we aren't aware of. I think it's really hard to say that we're positive there would never be a situation in which that would be needed. I would also offer that the legislature has done a lot of work around establishing public health emergencies, the authority of the legislature to confirm or ratify those public health emergencies. And so that might be the more appropriate mechanism because these are specific to once a public health emergency is established and then the authority of the public health officer to protect those children. The second repealer, should I continue?
Did you have a follow-up? Follow-up? Go ahead, Ripped on the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bush, wouldn't you agree that parents should be able to consent to any vaccination that their child could receive?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Bush.
the statute's pretty specific to the parents not being able to be found or located. And so I think when we talk about public health emergencies, and again, we think back to 9/11, you had thousands of families impacted by the deaths of the two towers being attacked. And if those parents can't be found, those children still need care. And so I would continue to believe that repealing that is maybe a little misguided. The second repealer.
Representative Trujillo, question?
Yes, I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
On the
Quick
first one.
question. How does the system currently deal with families who don't believe in vaccinations due to their religion? Would you automatically give those children vaccinations against their religion and family beliefs?
Ms. Bush.
Mr. Chairman, the system has a number of different ways that families can express exemption, religion being one of those, and those would still stand. Those would be documented and honored.
But in this case, if you couldn't find the parents and if you don't find the parents, you have a 6-year-old, you're not going to know what the religious beliefs are. But let's say it's a 14-year-old and they say, hey, I don't want to mention a specific religion, but they're of the faith that says we don't partake. What would happen that minors they'd be vaccinated against their will or cared for against their will?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure what cared for against my will would look like. I'm sure that there are others who can provide examples. It's my understanding that when an exemption for a vaccination is requested, that's documented and lives on file with the Department of Health and other places, schools, et cetera. And so I would imagine that that can be found. It's not a verbal consent every single time a new vaccine is up, right? When you are granted an exemption, and I think I would defer to Representative Penn, you probably know better. But it's my understanding that that's a formal request that's made through a variety of forms and documents, and those live in archived ways and could be found.
Yeah, technically is it a question? Go ahead, Representative Penn.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to offer a bit of, I do have a question, but just to offer a bit of clarification, yes and no. So there is a state database that can be accessed to look at immunization records. Does it say exemption in there? No, I don't think that it does. Sometimes if it's a note written on a chart somewhere, and so that can be a little bit difficult. But I think in this situation, once again, we're talking about vaccination, we're talking about emergency situations. And so, most vaccinations, you don't get protection from a vaccination for usually a couple of weeks. And so when we, the instance given is 9/11, I just can't foresee a situation where we need an emergent immunization. And even still, I mean, I think this is a parental rights issue. And so would you agree?
Now, these questions, yep. Ms. Bush.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's difficult to contemplate today all of the potential things of the future. I think that the world is moving quickly. I think that we are facing challenges that we wouldn't have dreamed of 10 years ago. And I think the same will be true in 10 years when we look back on today. And so I would hate to make a decision today that we deeply regret in the future because something is available, whether that's to combat a chemical warfare or any of those kind of situations. I'd hate to really question the decisions made today because we just didn't know to think of them.
And you might not know the answer to this because I don't. Is a tetanus shot considered a vaccination? I mean, I can see that being an immediate and within 24 hours, 12 hours,
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
yes, I do believe tetanus is considered a vaccination.
And I'm sure if I try, I could think of maybe some other ones, but that was the one that came to mind. All right,
Okay.
question, Representative Hornock, never mind.
Mr. Chairman. I understand there's some complications around this, but can you think of a specific example? Because we can go through hypotheticals. We can go through, oh, maybe on 9/11. Oh, maybe this happens someday. Oh, maybe 10 years in the future, this would happen. Is there any specific example where not having this specific bullet point in state statute has resulted in the detrimental health care of a child?
If you know off the top of your head, Ms. Bush.
Mr. Chairman, I do not unfortunately have a compendium of all history of health in my head. I can try and find one and work with them. I'm certain that it exists. I don't question that.
Good news is we're not going to get through the whole bill today, so we have the weekend.
Oh, thank you.
On you'll
I
and other
really
people
appreciate
behind you will
that.
have the weekend as well. Representative, didn't you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, I think something that I read in high school actually is coming back to me where I read a book about, I think it was the hot zone, where the Marburg virus or Ebola is something that occasionally runs rampant in outbreaks in Africa. And there was a situation in the eastern seaboard somewhere where there could have been an outbreak. Is this a situation where you have a fast moving, super deadly virus where basically if you get it, you will die? If there was a vaccination for that, it would be a case where it makes sense to do it sooner rather than later.
Mr. Chairman, yes, I think it's a perfect example among others.
I also read the hot zone in high school. Representative Clouston, and then we'll let Ms. Bush finish her comments, but we're going to end it there. So you get to stay on the hot seat, but hospitals,
Can you
Need to
just
wait.
stay because it's fun? I like this group testimony thing.
they're fun. Representative Clouston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. thoughts on this? Vaccinations and medical treatment in emergencies is a huge, sudden problem. Looking at smoking cessation, which is an ongoing issue of something that's happening daily, happening currently, right? I mean, these are two completely different situations. Representative Ward had mentioned that a person could not access their online medical records. Could they go to the hospital and get those records?
Ms. Bush, if you know.
Mr. Chairman, yes.
We'll let you, I know you had some other thoughts to get through.
Sure.
And then we'll get through those and maybe we'll call it good. Go ahead, Ms. Bush.
Great. So the second repealer in this is the tobacco cessation component found again in a completely different part of statute. This is under the emancipation statute. This was passed in 2009. And interestingly, and I think because history is great, the fine Chairman Zwanitzer was a co-sponsor on that bill. So maybe you have more context and history to give us about that if you can remember back to 2009.
We wanted to help youth quit smoking, as we still do today, I think, in my mind.
Correct.
But I did. That was the Senator Sessions bill, wasn't it?
It was.
I think my good senator encouraged me to be the House sponsor on that, yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the Medical Society would oppose repealing this as well. We think that any pathway to someone finding an ability to quit a very dangerous and addictive substance is a good thing. And so putting a barrier in for someone to not get help, it doesn't seem to track with the intent of a society in general, I think, to not have kids addicted to tobacco or other substances. And so there are a variety of situations that you can imagine. If there's a teen or an adolescent who has obtained cigarettes or a vape pen or whatever is available without their parents' knowledge, and they've gotten addicted, and then they recognize in themselves that they have a problem and they need help. I can't imagine a world where we would want them to not be able to seek help because they might fear retribution from their parents. If their parents never knew they had gotten that vape pen from a friend in school, and then they recognize a problem and want to address it, yes, in a utopia, we hope that the family life is a really good one and it's the one that all of us grew up in and share. That's not the case for all kids. And so I would want any teen to be able to honor the relationship they establish with their care provider and go talk to a person they trust and say, I really need help. I got in trouble. I'm in over my head. I don't want to vape anymore. This is scary. Can you provide therapy, counseling, medications? Can you do those things? But if you do, I'm going to go home and if my parents find out, they'll beat me or there's abusive fear at home. I think that it's really sad to contemplate putting a barrier up for those kids to get the help that they need when the end goal really is for them to not be addicted to tobacco.
So thank you for that. The bad news is it looks like you have at least 2 questions up here coming at you, but we might have to keep you on the hot seat on Monday when we carry this bill over to 8 a.m. Monday. Barb, and with that, committee, please try to make it to the floor in the next 2 minutes before roll call if you can. Thank you for giving us some stuff to think about over the weekend and maybe some potential